Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. No place for hate in New York. That's what the city's mayor said. This as pro-Gaza demonstrations see arrests at NYU and Yale, with reports of threats against Jewish students at Columbia University.
Multiple people were taken into custody overnight in New York, and multiple arrests were made at Yale as anti-Israel protests escalate across the U.S. universities. We bring in a special guest.
A New York jury heard opening arguments in Trump's so-called hush money trial yesterday. The first witness was called and will continue his testimony today. And prosecutors are calling for Trump to be held in contempt.
The Baltimore bridge collapse now moves to the courtroom. More on the mayor and the city council's new lawsuit.
Unitedhealth says hackers stole health and personal data of potentially a substantial proportion of Americans from its systems in February. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
A crowd of Good Samaritans pulls a man from a burning car. The dramatic rescue was all caught on video. We have the footage.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd.
Yet again, we're seeing some real unrest on those college campuses. Police in New York City were dressed in riot gear, and they had to break up those protests at NYU last night, zip tying those demonstrators that are against Israel and throwing them into vans.
Right, intense scenes. And I think leaders at the university were saying that the pro-Palestinian protesters were actually breaching barricades and they were antagonizing people. So that's part of our top news this morning. Police arrested multiple protesters overnight, including staff members at pro-Gaza demonstrations at NYU in Manhattan. And nearly 50 people were taken into custody at Yale University on Monday.
Meanwhile, Columbia University faces a 7th day of protests. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the unrest, which has seen reports of threats against Jewish students.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul was at Columbia University on Monday. She says America was founded on people searching for religious freedom.
No one here on a college campus should feel they're being persecuted because of their religious beliefs.
The governor says students she has spoken with are afraid. New York Mayor Eric Adams says there is no place for hate in New York.
And I don't want to be, and I won't be the mayor where you have to take off your hijab, your yarmulke, or your turban when you enter a place of higher education, or use our transportation system, or walk our streets.
Adams says the right to protest is a fundamental right that Americans hold dear.
What we are seeing playing out on many of our college campuses, and particularly in Columbia University, is hate.
An NYPD official discusses instances of aggression towards Jewish students.
Israeli students were walking on campus, had their flags taken away from them, snatched out of their hands.
The NYPD also reported hateful things being said towards Jewish students. At NYU, a heavy police presence was seen at a pro-Palestinian demonstration on Monday. Officers moved on the crowd shortly after nightfall. After hundreds of demonstrators refused to vacate a plaza, demonstrators heaped scorn on those sworn to protect and serve, chanting, NYPD, KKK. NYPD, KKK. Police took the pro-Gaza demonstrators and faculty members into custody. Buses filled with protesters can be seen departing the area. Over in Connecticut, dozens of people were arrested on Monday at Yale University as authorities moved to shut down a pro-Gaza protest. Hundreds of protesters had gathered at a plaza on campus. Police say nearly 50 people refused to leave and were charged with criminal trespass. The protests across university campuses have gathered steam since over 100 people were arrested at Columbia University last week. This after the NYPD was called to clear an encampment. Columbia history professor Christopher Brown says the arrest of demonstrators will be remembered as a shameful day in Columbia's history.
To send riot police to pick up peaceful protesters on our campus was unprecedented, unjustified, disproportionate, divisive, and dangerous.
Professor Maria Rivera Malucci says the word education comes from the Latin educare, which means to lead out.
How are we leading our students out? In zip ties?
Major Columbia University donor Robert Kraft says Columbia needs to do more to protect Jewish students. The New England Patriots owner has threatened to cut off further funding until corrective action is taken. In response to the unrest and safety concerns, Columbia says almost all classes on its main campus will be hybrid until the end of the semester. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Columbia University President Minouche Shafik is under increasing pressure to step down now. The Columbia Jewish Alumni Association at New York's Republican delegation have both written letters asking her to resign.
The organizations say they don't think the university has responded adequately to chants against Jewish people and in support of Hamas at the protests.
And changing topic, the judge in former President Trump's so-called hush money case will hear arguments today over whether Trump violated his gag order.
The prosecution is calling for Trump to be held in contempt.
In a private session without the jury, Justice Merchan will decide whether the prosecution's arguments hold merit.
Prosecutors accused Trump of violating the gag order 10 times, including when he called lawyer-turned-witness Michael Cohen a disgraced attorney and felon on social media. Trump's lawyers have said his social media posts were lawful.
What Judge Merchan would do if he sides with prosecutors is not yet clear. Punishment could range from a fine to jail time.
Jurors in former President Trump's so-called hush money trial heard opening statements yesterday. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the highlights.
Prosecutors alleged on the first day of former President Trump's criminal trial that Trump corrupted the 2016 election and deceived voters by trying to cover up encounters with adult film actress Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal. The prosecution called it, quote, election fraud, pure and simple. Trump's defense attorney told jurors that his client committed no crime and added, quote, there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. Prosecutors say Trump falsified checks and invoices to disguise payments to his personal lawyer Michael Cohen as legal services, when they were actually meant to reimburse him for paying off Daniels. Trump denies an encounter with Daniels and weighed in on the payments to Cohen after court on Monday.
That checks being paid to a lawyer. He is a lawyer, or was a lawyer. And also the things he got in trouble for were things that had nothing to do with me.
The prosecution is expected to call Cohen to the stand to testify against Trump. The former lawyer previously pleaded guilty to tax fraud and lying to Congress. Prosecutors called their first witness, former media mogul David Pecker. Pecker was the CEO of American Media Incorporated, the company prosecutors allege helped Trump bury negative stories leading up to the 2016 election. Pecker is expected to continue testimony on Tuesday. While this is Trump's first criminal trial, a civil fraud case against him is also being heard in New York. Trump's lawyers in the New York AG's office came to terms on a $175 million bond. Trump initially posted the bond through Knight Specialty Insurance as he appeals a $450 million judgment for allegedly inflating his company's net worth. The agreement says Trump has to keep the $175 million in an account controlled exclusively by the insurance company. Any withdrawing or trading from it will be forbidden, and officials will have to provide a monthly statement to the Attorney General. This is so the AG can be sure Trump will comply with the full fine if his appeal fails. Outside the courtroom, a Trump lawyer laid into the two ongoing proceedings.
The fact that we have two courts, not one, criminal and civil, being used against one man because they cannot beat him in the polls is a disgrace to the American judicial system. He should not have two teams of lawyers here today. He should not even be here today because he did nothing wrong. It is the epitome of a witch hunt.
On Monday night, Trump told Real America's Voice that the jury was picked so fast, calling it a very unfair situation because the area is mostly Democrat. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
For a breakdown of the start of Trump's criminal trial in New York, we invite John Malcolm. He's the vice president of the Heritage Foundation's Institute for Constitutional Government and the director of the Mies Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. John, it's great to have you here. The prosecution paints a picture of Trump engaging in a conspiracy to influence the election by concealing harmful information, whereas Trump's attorneys argue that he wasn't involved in those 34 business records and there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. Can you explain how these two arguments differ and which one is on more firm legal ground?
Well, we'll have to see what the evidence shows to determine which is on more firm legal ground. At the moment, I happen to sort of lean towards the former president. So essentially what the prosecution's theory is that after the Access Hollywood tape in which former President Trump was commenting about grabbing women's genitals, that the campaign was panicking. And two women came forward, Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, claiming that they had affairs with Donald Trump in 2006, and they were going to divulge their stories, and that Donald Trump paid them off in order to silence them and make sure that those stories didn't see the light of day, and that was done for the purpose of influencing the election, so that there wouldn't be more of a firestorm about these accusations involving him and women, and that he falsely claimed that those payments were legal payments for legal services rendered on his company's books, and that was fraud, according to Alvin Bragg. Donald Trump's story is, look, my lawyer negotiated a non-disclosure agreement to settle a nuisance suit that would have been embarrassing to me. That's what happens to rich people and to rich companies. There's nothing wrong with a non-disclosure agreement. I was in the White House at the time all of this was taking place, all of these invoices, all very, very peripheral, and that I'm entitled to contribute to my own campaign if I wanted to. So that there was nothing wrong with my paying money to settle a nuisance lawsuit.
Okay, so next, John, prosecutors allege that American Media Incorporated CEO David Pecker participated in this alleged conspiracy through the so-called catch and kill process that you're alluding to. Right. Is what he did illegal, and how does that relate to Trump's actions?
Well, it's illegal if you believe Alvin Bragg's theory that the purpose for doing this was to interfere with the election and that it was essentially a campaign contribution. So David Pecker was the head of National Enquirer at the time, and he purchased Karen McDougal's story. That was one of the two women I just talked about, for $150,000 in what has been referred to as a catch and kill scheme. He basically bought exclusive rights to the story for the express purpose of not publishing that story. So it never saw the light of day. There's nothing wrong. The National Enquirer paid a lot of people for stories. Sometimes they published them, sometimes they didn't. I have my doubts as to whether doing so at the behest of Donald Trump was illegal. But that is Alvin Bragg's theory, is that it wasn't just to help Donald Trump. It was to help his campaign, and hence was really a campaign contribution of sorts. And
NPR reports that Pecker is going to testify about that payment to McDougal, which Trump allegedly did not pay him for. And then that sets up the whole context for Cohen's payment, because Pecker wouldn't pay a second time to Stormy Daniels here. What is expected in this trial for the remainder of the week?
Well, I don't know who the rest of the witnesses are going to be. The trial is moving very, very quickly. They picked a jury in a week. I thought it would take at least 2 or 3 weeks to pick a jury. David Pecker is now on the stand. He'll probably testify most, if not all, of today. But it's going to be quite the trial. You're going to hear from Michael Cohen, the president's former attorney and alleged fixer. You're going to hear from Karen McDougal. You're going to hear from Stormy Daniels. It's going to be quite the cast of characters. It's going to be better than anything going on Broadway in New York.
Well, John, thank you so much for weighing in this morning. John Malcolm at the Heritage Foundation.
Good to be with you.
And the city of Baltimore is suing the owner and manager of the ship that crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge last month, leading to the bridge's collapse and the deaths of 6 people. The ship, the Dali, is owned by Grace Ocean Private Limited and managed by Synergy Marine. The Baltimore mayor and city council filed a claim on Monday. It accuses both companies of providing the vessel with an incompetent crew that lacked proper skill and training. The claim says the Dali left the port despite having indications of an inconsistent power supply. The city seeks unspecified damages from both companies. Earlier this month, the companies filed a petition in federal court to limit their liability. The city of Baltimore is denying the company's claims in their petition.
State Department spokesman Matthew Miller condemned Iran-backed attacks on U.S. troops in the Middle East yesterday. This comes after an anonymous U.S. defense official said U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria faced 2 separate rocket and drone attacks over the weekend. The official said a rocket attack targeted U.S. troops in northeastern Syria on Sunday, less than 24 hours after an attack in western Iraq. These are the first such attacks in close to 3 months. Frequent attacks stopped after the U.S. struck back with airstrikes in Iraq when 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in a drone strike in Jordan. Miller said the attacks show Iran has no respect for Iraqi sovereignty. He said the U.S. has made it clear to Iran and its proxies that it will defend its interests and personnel.
Coming up, tackling the nation's homelessness crisis. Can cities prohibit people from sleeping on the streets? We bring you the arguments from both sides made yesterday before the Supreme Court.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrators are ramping up their protests at Columbia University and other schools across the U.S. The safety of Jewish students is called into question as the wave of anti-Semitism rises. We get analysis on the situation coming up.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging. Gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, NJ Pack, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. ShenYun.com.
23 سال 16 سال عمري ما هفت
ما داعش کردی آن برانبر خوشکو دایکانی ازدی ما کاری که دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارودوخی که استهای به تایبت لایرا خوشکوریا بشه که دگره با و حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
ریم بو او هفت روز من بو و داعش ذکرت تامبوم كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهار بيدن نبو باوان رحم نبو ودمنا سؤالان من خادران نزل باوان نفستم بس أنا قبس ناش بجوش بانش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبرن تي حملي زارود الدم واسسي وان همو جيبرن
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار زور گوره لما افرطانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان لیده که همانه روزانه دست فروشیده
اليوم التوزيع كلنا نصيب
Imagine being a child, having a child mentality and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court yesterday heard a historic case about the growing issue of homelessness.
It's weighing whether cities can punish people for sleeping outside when there's a lack of shelter space. This comes as record numbers of people are without a permanent place to live in the U.S.
The Supreme Court on Monday confronted the nation's homelessness crisis. Justices heard arguments in a case that started in the small city of Grants Pass, Oregon. The city passed laws that prohibit sleeping in public places. Violators are fined almost $300. Repeat offenders faced up to 30 days in jail. 3 homeless people sued the city over the law back in 2018. An appeals court found that banning camping in places without enough shelter amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. Grants Pass then appealed to the High Court. A key point in this case is a 1962 Supreme Court ruling. It says that the Eighth Amendment bars punishing individuals based on their status. Grants Pass argues it's not punishing people for their status, but for the act of sleeping in public. Liberal justices on Monday disagreed.
Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves not sleeping?
But a lawyer for the city argues that being homeless is not a status.
Status is something that a person is when they're not doing anything. So being addicted, having cancer, being poor are all statuses that you have apart from any conduct.
Another issue is that the city doesn't offer any homeless shelters as alternatives to sleeping in public places. The closest shelter is in a neighboring city 10 minutes away. A lawyer for the plaintiffs used this point in his arguments.
The city is implementing its policy of banishing people, its own residents.
Banishment is a strange word when you're talking about something 10 minutes away.
But again, the question is whether you could still realistically be part of the community where you grew up.
Conservative justices seemed to side with the city during Monday's hearing. The liberal justices mostly leaned towards the plaintiffs. A ruling is due by the end of June.
And this morning, we are also following pro-Palestinian protests that turned anti-Semitic, sweeping U.S. universities with arrests happening at Columbia University specifically.
Here for some analysis on the anti-Semitism unfolding at Columbia is Gerard Felitti, a civil and human rights attorney who is also the senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. Thanks for joining us, Gerard.
A pleasure, thank you.
Well, good morning again. So first of all, of course, there is also other arrests happening at NYU, but at Columbia University, it certainly seems that that campus specifically sticks out in those, protests, anti-Semitism. Jewish students are saying they don't feel safe anymore. There's a rabbi that said, connected with the university, that those students should actually return home. So tell me a little more about how did we even arrive here? Where is this anti-Semitism there coming from?
Well, anti-Semitism at Columbia is systemic. It's been systemic for a long time. It's one of those institutions that had hired faculty members who were very anti-Israel and anti-Jewish. And for many, many years, they allowed this atmosphere to fester on campus, and this is how bad it's gotten. That after October 7th, all of this boiled out. So this is a problem that's been at Columbia for many years. Our law firm, the Lawfare Project, we filed a civil rights complaint on behalf of a student 4 years ago at Columbia, and nothing was done about that. This is not a new problem. Columbia has done nothing about it.
Yeah, and this situation at Columbia has been escalating since those leaders testified before Congress last week here. Is the school breaching this Title VI? The Education Committee Chair, Representative Virginia Fox, says they are, and they could lose federal funding if they are.
Well, we believe that they are. We also have a lawsuit currently pending against Columbia on behalf of a student whose civil rights were violated. This is a Title VI problem. Students are entitled to be on campus without harassment, intimidation, discrimination. They're entitled to have an education that's free of this. They're entitled to not be discriminated against. But that is what Jewish students are facing right now. And this is a civil rights violation that needs to be remedied.
So maybe this is then kind of a two-part question, but so tell me a little more about what you're looking at specifically to determine that this is a Title VI question. Also, because there is criticism on both ends. So there's, of course, anti-Semitism, safety is a big issue, and then there is an argument that free speech, the other side that needs to be protected. Tell me more about that, the right to protest, and when it actually just crosses the line.
Well, let's start with free speech. Free speech does not entitle you to attack people. It does not entitle you to attack people like my client Yosef Haddad, an Israeli Arab journalist who was beaten on Thursday night as he was attempting to enter campus to give a speech. Free speech does not give you the opportunity to harass and intimidate students, to prevent them from going to class. Free speech is a noble concept, it's a good thing, and it's the law, but you can't take that into conduct. And when we have violence, when we have threats of violence, and even when the speech is a call for genocide, it becomes problematic. Now, what Columbia is not doing is it's not doing anything about it. It has not restricted these protests in a reasonable way. Columbia is a private university, by the way. It has no obligation to let these students say what they're saying. It chooses to do so. The First Amendment doesn't fully apply on a private campus. But leaving that aside, Colombia could place reasonable restrictions on protests. It's not doing so. It's allowing this atmosphere to become toxic and dangerous for Jewish students.
Well, a spokesperson for Colombia said that their community has safety as their #1 priority. Now, the White House at the same time is calling for an end to anti-Semitic violence, including threats and physical intimidation, which you were mentioning there. What are some of the initiatives that can be taken to eliminate this, whether that be legal or leaders trying to get involved with the community or something like that?
They need to enforce, law enforcement needs to make arrests. Colleges need to enforce policies. There are policies against what's going on. There are rules against what's going on. Students can be disciplined, suspended, expelled from school. You create a safer campus environment. Colombia allows students, even though it has a closed campus and only students are supposed to be on campus, it's allowing people like Nardine Kaswani, a radical member of All Palestine whose group is responsible for hate crime attacks in New York City, to come onto campus and radicalize students. That's against policy, but it's allowed. These colleges need to actually do what they promised students to do to keep them safe.
So actually, the university president just moved classes online to consider next steps. If you could tell them, if you could give them a suggestion, what do you think they should be doing next?
No, they need to shut it all down. It's not just bringing classes online partially is just telling Jewish students, it's telling victims to stay home while allowing the aggressors, the perpetrators of hate, to be on campus. It's creating a two-tiered system of education which is discriminatory. Shut it all down. Until you can assure the safety of all students, don't allow people on campus. Do it remotely like we did during the pandemic.
And this is all happening right as Passover is happening here, now one of the main Jewish holidays. And there's going to be a police presence at the Craft Center. That's a Jewish cultural center at Columbia here. Are they doing enough to really protect Jewish students? I mean, they've been told to go home and stay home by the rabbi, as we mentioned.
No, they're absolutely not, and this is the problem. Colombia needs to allow police on campus. We may need Governor Hochul to send in the National Guard, like we had during the Civil Rights Movement, to uphold the civil rights of Jewish students and other Americans who want to be free of this terrorist propaganda. Colombia is not doing enough. Most schools are not doing enough. We need security, and that's not being provided.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time this morning, Jarrett Ferliti, for coming in.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. And stay with us. The Biden administration moves to intervene in out-of-state abortion cases. We have more on a new rule coming up.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Dave's Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Dave's enzyme fermented coffee.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end, and life is renewed once again.
It's a magical painting.
Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
Welcome back. President Biden's administration has moved to shield women who travel to another state to have an abortion.
A new rule issued yesterday bans the disclosure of abortion-related health information.
The new rule was issued through the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services. It's aimed at protecting the information of women living in states where abortion is illegal who travel out of state to have the procedure.
A research group called the Guttmacher Institute says over 90,000 women crossed state lines for an abortion in the first half of last year. That was over double the amount during a similar period in 2020.
Some states like Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, and Idaho have tried to stop that by making it a crime to help or pay for such travel. Lawsuits over such measures are pending in Alabama and Idaho.
The Biden administration has finalized the first ever minimum staffing rule at nursing homes. Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday announced the new rule intended to remedy cases of neglect and delay in care facilities. The mandate requires at least 3.48 hours of nursing care per resident per day in facilities that receive federal funding. The new rule also requires a registered nurse to be on site at all times. Nursing homes in areas that are experiencing workforce shortages can get temporary exemptions. Operators have objected to the new rule, saying some facilities struggling to fill open positions could be forced to close.
And a judge in a case against an Arizona rancher declared a mistrial yesterday. The rancher was accused of killing an illegal immigrant from Mexico on his property. Jurors had been deliberating the case since last week. 75-year-old George Allen Kelly was charged with second-degree murder and aggravated assault after allegedly shooting Gabriel Butimea. Prosecutors say Kelly fired on Butimea while he was allegedly passing through his ranch with a group. Prosecutors told the jury Kelly made inconsistent statements to the police. That was over if he had fired his weapon and whether he was acting in self-defense. Kelly's lawyers said police falsely claimed that Kelly fired upon multiple people and failed to follow other leads that might have proved his innocence. We're moving over to Taiwan. A series of earthquakes rocked the country overnight. Authorities have reported no major damage and no casualties.
The U.S. Geological Survey says the strongest quake had a magnitude 6.1. This comes after a magnitude 7.4 earthquake hit the island earlier this month.
That tremor killed 17 people and injured over 1,000. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest on Taiwan's quakes.
Taiwan officials say 2 multi-story buildings took further damage overnight after being evacuated earlier this month after a magnitude 7.4 quake. The U.S. Geological Survey says the epicenter of Tuesday's 6.1 magnitude quake was south of the city of Hualien.
I don't dare to sleep.
The half-dozen other tremors, all near Hualien, ranged from magnitude 4.5 to magnitude 6. The rural area took the brunt of the damage from the earthquake earlier this month. Hualien's mayor asked residents not to stay inside buildings until danger subsides.
Everyone is in panic and fear. I hope all residents can move to an open place.
Buildings across large parts of Taiwan swayed, including in the capital, Taipei.
As we live on the 6th floor, I felt it was a bit troublesome to go down.
Taipei residents seemed largely unfazed, with some saying they kept sleeping even as the island shook overnight.
Yes, we still have to sleep. Yes.
I was very tired. I just continued to go back to sleep, hoping for the best.
Taiwan has strict construction standards and widespread public education on earthquakes. Taiwanese chipmaker TSMC said it saw no impact on operations. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The U.S. to withdraw forces from Niger, an African country in the Sahel with about 1,000 American troops. How will this affect security there, specifically in regards to terrorist activity? Here's Kervin O'Quinn, the former lead intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance coordinator for the U.S. Army and the host of This Week Explained podcast.
It is going to have a devastating effect on the Western Sahel. It's going to have a devastating effect on the country of Niger. It's a country that I've been to, that I have worked on this ISR program, that the U.S. military has now decided to leave. What that is going to do is open up a security vacuum in the region. It's going to allow terrorist organizations like the Islamic State, like Al-Qaeda of the Western Sahel, to actually not just get into those countries, but to expand. And if you're looking at a map and you look at Africa, it's quite close to up to the north, which is Europe. So those terrorist organizations can then grow, enhance in the Western Sahel, and then move into parts of Europe.
That is very serious stuff that we're talking about here. And the relations between the Western world and Niger have frayed, of course, since the junta took power, and then they told French forces to leave as well, and then they turned to Russia for support here. When the troops leave, will that create an intelligence gap on tracking terrorist organizations like ISIS that you're alluding to?
Yeah, it's definitely going to, because they are going to move from France and the U.S. to utilizing Russia for their intelligence gathering and for their counterterrorism. And so what they're actually looking to do is use the former Wagner forces. As we know, Prigozhin passed away last year. Those forces have now been incorporated into the Russian military, and those forces are within the Western Sahel, and they are working with these governments. They are actually pushing these juntas to increase. So we are going to see not only the terrorist organizations coming in, but we're also going to see more coups d'etats happen in these countries. You know, we've had Burkina Faso with multiple coups. Niger has had a coup. Chad has had coups. These are just going to open more problems for the West, and it's all because Russia has done a very good information operation campaign to provide disinformation to these countries and their governments in order to gain more influence in the region.
Well, thank you for covering all that for us, Kervin. Representative Matt Gaetz says that there are over 1,000 U.S. troops effectively being held, quote, hostage in Niger, and that the medical supplies are running low. Is this an accurate categorization of what's happening?
Yeah, that is what's happening. There are other things on the ground with these countries as U.S. troops are trying to deploy into the region or deploy out of the region, where they're getting held up, whether it's at the airport or at the borders. And then all of the supplies that the U.S. is bringing in, that as well as getting held up by these military organizations that are now holding power in these countries. Those supplies are not getting to the troops as quickly as it should be, and that's causing problems across the country.
Well, thank you so much for this update this morning. Kervin O'Quinn, former lead ISR coordinator for the U.S. Army and the host of This Week Explained podcast.
Thank you.
Up next, Unitedhealth says hackers stole health and personal data of potentially a substantial proportion of Americans from its systems in February. Find out.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste, and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth, without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. on food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
The 2024 NTD 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place at Merkin Hall, Kaufman Music Center in New York from September 18th to 21st. The competition specially invites vocalists from the world-famous Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve as judges. The prestigious Gold Award is $10,000. Chinese vocal artists aged 18 to 50 are welcome to register.
Good to have you back. We also have NTD's Business Matters host Dawn Ma with us to give us the latest updates from the business world. So, Dawn, there is new information coming out on the Unitedhealth hack that happened recently. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so what's happening is Unitedhealth Group said yesterday that hackers stole health and personal data of potentially a substantial portion of Americans from its systems in February. So this disclosure suggests that patients' healthcare information remains vulnerable. And according to an initial review of the compromised data, it shows that files with protected health information or personally identifiable information was in there. So we're finding out that the data theft in February occurred despite a ransom payment actually here. So Unitedhealth's chief executive told CNBC yesterday that this ransom was paid as part of the company's commitment to do all it could to protect patient data from disclosure. This is what he said.
Yeah, and surprisingly, Bloomberg reports that Unitedhealth exceeded profit estimates even though it was hacked here. What was the motive for these hackers?
Well, it appears that the hackers, what they do is they usually seek sensitive data, such as patient records or medical histories, potentially treatment plans as well for use in further criminal acts or ransom demands, as we've seen. Meanwhile, another hacker group posted 22 screenshots on the dark web for about a week, some containing Unitedhealth customers' protected healthcare and personal data. But it appears that the silver lining here is that Unitedhealth saying that there is no evidence to suggest that doctors' charts or full medical histories of individuals were stolen. It didn't say exactly how many people's data were stolen, but it was monitoring online forums where hackers tend to leak or reveal or trade such data.
Right, so fingers crossed nothing more is coming out there. They also apparently launched a website and a call center dedicated for free identity theft protection, so for anybody that is interested. But moving on, the U.S. is suing to block the merger of Coach and Michael Kors handbag makers. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this is another lawsuit in terms of antitrust. So the Federal Trade Commission is seeking to block Coach parent Tapestry and its $8.5 billion deal to buy Michael Kors owner Capri. So the agency said that the merger, according to them, would eliminate direct head-to-head competition between the flagship brands of the two luxury handbag makers. And let me read you a statement here from the FTC. It said that the tie-up, which would create a company with about 33,000 employees worldwide, could reduce wages actually and employee benefits. Several antitrust lawyers said the FTC's rare antitrust challenge against a high-end fashion merger could potentially set a precedent here for luxury deal regulation. Meanwhile, some are arguing against the lawsuit, of course, saying there's really no shortage of competition within the space for fashion, apparel, and accessories. And Capri Holdings, of course, strongly disagrees with the FTC's decision. And the company said in a statement, quote, that the market realities, which the government's challenge ignores, overwhelmingly demonstrates that this transaction will not limit, reduce, or constrain competition.
Well, you can bet Capri's going to put up a big legal fight in the courts over this. And they say that the FTC is the only one, the only regulator that hasn't approved their decision. A lot going on with these fashion brands right now, and it seems like there are some that aren't doing so well. Is that right, Don?
Yeah, definitely. Some are doing so poorly that they're filing for bankruptcy. And what we're seeing is fashion retailer Express filing for Chapter 11 here and plans to close more than 100 locations. This is according to them yesterday. It said that the company operates Express factory outlets, that's including Bonobos and Up West. The company has struggled in the past to gain traction when it comes to its customers in recent years. And business observers are saying the company hasn't really adapted to the rise of casual wear and as well as the decline of smart casual fashions. So Express says it's received $35 million in new financing from existing lenders. It also says that it has a potential buyer as well for a majority of its retail stores and operations.
Got it. Very important to stay on top of consumer trends. Thank you so much, Don Ma, host of Business Matters. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Elon Musk is pushing back against a federal court order in Australia. It directed X to temporarily hide posts displaying footage of an alleged terror incident. Take a look.
Elon Musk lashed out at Australia's Prime Minister on Tuesday. That's after a court ordered his social media company X to take down footage of an alleged terrorist attack in Sydney. The ruling, Musk said on X, meant that any country could control, quote, the entire internet. The post came after an overnight hearing in which Australia's federal court ordered X to temporarily hide videos of the incident a week earlier, in which a teenager was charged with terrorism for knifing an Assyrian priest and others. X said it had already blocked the post from Australian users, but Australia's e-safety commissioner had said the content should be taken down since it showed explicit violence. Although Musk wrote in another post that X had made the attack footage, quote, inaccessible to Australian IP addresses, a Reuters reporter in Australia was able to view the video. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese hit back at Musk hours later.
Well, this guy is showing his arrogance. He's a billionaire over there in the United States who thinks he's above Australian law. This isn't about censorship, it's about common sense and common decency, and Elon Musk should show some.
The standoff is the most recent front in the battle between the world's largest internet platforms and countries and nonprofits seeking more oversight of the content hosted on them. Last month, a U.S. judge threw out a lawsuit by X against a hate speech watchdog. In Australia, the e-safety commissioner fined X last year for failing to cooperate with a probe on anti-child abuse practices, which X is currently fighting in court. Spokespeople for X and the e-safety commissioner were not immediately available for comment.
Stay with us. A crowd of Good Samaritans pull a man from a burning car. The dramatic rescue was all caught on video. We have it for you coming up.
And a California aquarium is pairing stranded sea otters with surrogate mothers to ensure they learn the skills needed to survive. Get the story coming up.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
23 سال
16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردی ام برانبر خشک و دایکان یزدی اما کاری که دور دور لهمو چمت دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت لایران خوشتوریا بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
مریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش ذکرت
تامبوم كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهار بيدان نبو باوان رحم نبو
قدامنا سؤالان من خادران نزل باوان وفستم بس ما go بس ناش بيجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبري تي حملي زارود الدمع واسسي وان همو جيبري
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار گور گوره لما افرطانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان میده که همانه روزانه دست فروشی ده
Imagine being a child, you know, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
Good to have you back. We have a dramatic video that shows a swarm of people pulling a man from a burning car.
Thanks to several Good Samaritans, the driver only received minor injuries. Let's take a look.
Kadir Tola was driving into St. Paul, Minnesota on I-94 last week. He suddenly saw a car on fire. He thought someone could be inside the burning vehicle, so he pulled his car over to help with his dash cam rolling.
He and others ran toward the flaming car. They tried unsuccessfully to break the driver's window and pry open the doors as the flames grew more intense. Then Department of Transportation worker Dave Klepeda was able to shatter the window. The group then pulled the man out to safety.
Klepeda said he used a tool called a window punch to shatter the glass. He recommends all cars carry one of these tools for emergency situations. Kadir Tola said it could have been him stuck in that car and added it was something he will never forget.
The rescued driver told local media he's alive because of the actions of the Good Samaritans. Minnesota State Patrol said the car drifted off the road and hit a light pole and guardrail, which started the fire. Wow, that is really quick thinking and real courage by those people.
Exactly, yeah, love to see it. I see so many people just ran out of their cars thinking on their feet. I think somebody was even looking on the ground for something sharp maybe to break the window with. Somebody came running out with a fire extinguisher.
And you can imagine they're just thinking of others, because think about all the risks to their own health. I mean, you have a burning car there, but they just put that all aside and went for it.
Exactly, showed some real character there. Appreciate that. All right, and we are moving on though now to some away from action to the animal kingdom, because every year 10 to 15 sea otter pups are found stranded off the California coast. It's often because storms separate mother and pup.
Now 2 California aquariums are teaming up to introduce surrogate mothers to the stranded pups in hopes of returning them to the wild.
The Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California is partnering with Monterey Bay Aquarium. They're pairing stranded sea otter pups with new moms in an effort to return them back to the wild. This work is important because sea otters were nearly hunted to extinction in the early 1900s.
In the mid-30s, a remnant population was discovered just off of Big Sur of about 50 animals, and by that point they technically were protected under federal law. And so that remnant population over the last 80 years has gone from about 50 animals up to 3,000. So they currently occur, southern sea otters, just north of Santa Barbara, all the way up to just south of San Francisco.
The sea otters play an important role in keeping balance in the ecosystem on the coastline.
Sea otters are ecosystem engineers, and so they're a keystone predator in their near coastal environments, and basically what that means is that they are a critical sort of predator in that system that keeps herbivores like sea urchins in check so that sea urchins don't overpopulate and take out kelp forests and eelgrass beds, as an example.
The aquarium has successfully bonded their first surrogate mom named Millie and a currently unnamed pup. It's a crucial step to ensure an orphaned pup learns to survive.
That adult female will start to mimic behaviors that the pup should learn, will help it groom, will help it forage, will help teach it prey manipulation, how to open up shells, and anything that they would need to know that humans are enabled to teach them.
But it's not cheap looking after sea otters. They fight off cold with an inner furnace by eating 25% of their body weight every day.
To feed them every day, for 1 year, one otter is about $40,000. That is a bill that the aquarium fronts themselves. And so we are constantly doing fundraising, and when guests come to support the aquarium and visit, a portion of those proceeds come to support these conservation programs.
Otters are an internet favorite, with images of them holding hands and hugging often going viral. But they aren't always as cuddly as they look.
Them looking cute is not what their behavior is. They're in the weasel family, mustelids, and they can be very like badgers, weasels, wolverines. They're very territorial. They are water-based, and so we don't interact with them a lot. But even though they look cute and cuddly, they are just a wolverine in the water.
The 2 aquariums involved in the project have rescued around 8 stranded pups. They hope other organizations will join the program to help out. If they could do that, more otters would be able to join the population and help protect the California nearshore ecosystems.
Adorable, but also I think nature always has a way. It's interesting, right? How nature always has a way to regulate itself, keep in balance.
Yeah, first we see people helping people, and now animals being paired up to help each other. And you know, the Otter program manager says that these are all instincts coming out. The mothers can do this just way better than any human can.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting, you know, they're a predator and at the same time they're ecosystem engineers. And above all, though, they eat 25% of their body weight. That's crazy.
It's a lot of food that they have to provide them.
Food demolishers, yeah, absolutely. All right, we are heading to a quick break, but we're coming back in a little bit more than a minute, so stay with us.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
Yeah, so there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. The unrest continues at campuses across the nation.
Multiple people were taken into custody overnight in New York, and multiple arrests were made at Yale as anti-Israel protests escalate across U.S. universities.
The judge in former President Trump's so-called hush money case will hear arguments today over whether Trump violated his gag order and if he should be held in contempt.
The Baltimore bridge collapse now moves to the courtroom. More on the mayor and the city council's new lawsuit.
A project to build the first U.S. high-speed train is in the works. It will run between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. Proponents of the train say it will benefit the economy and the environment.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome and good morning. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd. Today's top news: police arrested multiple protesters overnight, including staff members at pro-Gaza demonstrations at NYU in Manhattan. And nearly 50 people were taken into custody at Yale University on Monday.
Meanwhile, Columbia University faces a 7th day of protests. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the unrest, which has seen reports of threats against Jewish students.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul was at Columbia University on Monday. She says America was founded on people searching for religious freedom.
No one here on a college campus should feel they're being persecuted because of their religious beliefs.
The governor says students she has spoken with are afraid. New York Mayor Eric Adams says there is no place for hate in New York.
And I don't want to be, and I won't be the mayor where you have to take off your hijab, your yarmulke, or your turban when you enter a place of higher education, or use our transportation system, or walk our streets.
Adams says the right to protest is a fundamental right that Americans hold dear.
What we are seeing playing out on many of our college campuses, and particularly in Columbia University, is hate.
An NYPD official discusses instances of aggression towards Jewish students.
Israeli students were walking on campus, had their flags taken away from them, snatched out of their hands.
The NYPD also reported hateful things being said towards Jewish students. At NYU, a heavy police presence was seen at a pro-Palestinian demonstration on Monday. Officers moved on the crowd shortly after nightfall. After hundreds of demonstrators refused to vacate a plaza, demonstrators heaped scorn on those sworn to protect and serve, chanting, "NYPD, KKK." NYPD, KKK. Police took the pro-Gaza demonstrators and faculty members into custody. Buses filled with protesters can be seen departing the area. Over in Connecticut, dozens of people were arrested on Monday at Yale University as authorities moved to shut down a pro-Gaza protest. Hundreds of protesters had gathered at a plaza on campus. Police say nearly 50 people refused to leave and were charged with criminal trespass. The protests across university campuses have gathered steam since over 100 people were arrested at Columbia University last week. This after the NYPD was called to clear an encampment. Columbia history professor Christopher Brown says the arrest of demonstrators will be remembered as a shameful day in Columbia's history.
To send riot police to pick up peaceful protesters on our campus was unprecedented, unjustified, disproportionate, divisive, and dangerous.
Professor Maria Rivera Malucci says the word education comes from the Latin educare, which means to lead out.
How are we leading our students out? In zip ties?
Major Columbia University donor Robert Kraft says Columbia needs to do more to protect Jewish students. The New England Patriots owner has threatened to cut off further funding until corrective action is taken. In response to the unrest and safety concerns, Columbia says almost all classes on its main campus will be hybrid until the end of the semester. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Columbia University President Minu Shafiq is under increasing pressure now to step down. The Columbia Jewish Alumni Association and New York's Republican delegation have both written letters asking her to resign.
The organizations say they don't think the university has responded adequately to chants against Jewish people and in support of Hamas at the protests. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised President Biden and House Speaker Johnson for their support after the U.S. House passed a long-awaited aid bill this weekend. Biden and Zelensky spoke Monday morning, with Biden pledging to quickly approve the measure once it passes in the Senate. Zelensky said the bill clarifies that Ukraine would receive long-range tactical missile systems it has long desired. On Monday, a delegation of U.S. lawmakers visited Kyiv to reiterate their support for Ukraine. Both Republican and Democrat representatives paid their respects at the Memory Wall of fallen defenders of Ukraine after meeting Zelensky. Kyiv has also been pushing for more Patriot air defense systems from Europe. European ministers on Monday said they were looking urgently at how to provide more air defenses to Ukraine, but stopped short of concrete pledges of the Patriot systems. Germany has been the only EU country so far to pledge an extra shipment. Let's delve into what impact this aid to Ukraine will have with William Ruger, a retired U.S. Navy officer, a veteran of the Afghanistan War, and the president of the American Institute for Economic Research. William, very important stuff here. How will the $60 billion in aid going to Ukraine affect the war there in terms of troop morale?
Well, it'll certainly bolster them, I think, knowing that they've got this new infusion of military aid. The challenge, of course, is that the biggest problem is a manpower problem, right? All that money in the world is not going to make it easy to resolve the fundamental challenge, which is that they don't have enough people to man this front if the Russians keep pouring men and material into it. And so the question is how can they use that best, which would be, I think, on the defensive as opposed to another failed counteroffensive.
This money is going to use for air defense systems as well as artillery shells. Now, President Zelensky has confirmed that this bill will provide Ukraine with the ATACMS missiles. Will that give Ukraine the ability to strike deeper into Russian territory, and can that change the tide of this war?
I don't think it fundamentally changes the tide of the war. I think what we will have is we'll see escalations that result from this. Again, the biggest challenge here is that manpower problem, and that's why Ukraine has tried to increase both conscription and better voluntary measures to get people to sign up to fight in the war. And I think right now you're seeing that the battle of manpower and the battle of will is a critical part of what happens next. One of the things that I think we should be worried about here is that Russia is actually increasing its military force size and has continued to be able to supply material to the front, whereas Ukraine has had limited ability to do so, and that's going to be a real challenge ahead.
Recently, this war has been described as a stalemate, but conditions have turned in Russia's favor with their advances and also taking Ukrainian territory, and then more offensives expected in the summer here. Is Russia going to view these ATACMS, though, as a threat from the West?
Well, I think all along Russia has been concerned about the extent of Western involvement. I mean, that's one of the reasons why this part of the conflict the last couple of years occurred in the first place. I mean, it's not the only cause, but the push east by NATO is something that worried Russia. It contributed to a security dilemma. And so that's one of the things that you see here is a challenge of escalation. And so one of the things that the United States needs to do is to avoid the escalatory spiral while it still supports Ukraine here to make sure that it isn't defeated. That's the challenge that American policymakers, I think, have set for themselves. But one real big challenge here, of course, is that you have essentially a $100 billion bill. And the question is, what does that opportunity cost for Americans, especially given that it's very unlikely that Ukraine is going to be able to meet its war aims?
On that note, are there any measures in this bill that provide for accountability as to where American taxpayer dollars are going?
I think a lot of Americans wonder about whether there's going to be accountability. It's something that you've seen people like Senator Paul raise about this. I think that it would be better if there was something like what we saw in Afghanistan, where you had the Special Inspector General And that allowed for, I think, a lot more transparency so that Americans had confidence or at least understood what was occurring. And I don't think that what we've seen here is been sufficient to give Americans that confidence, especially given the nature of Ukrainian society, which has been very corrupt. And that has, I think, challenged a lot of Americans' confidence that their money is going all towards this effort.
Thank you for bringing us your insight this morning. William Ruger, retired U.S. Navy officer, veteran of the Afghanistan War, and president of the American Institute for Economic Research.
Thank you.
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller condemned Iran-backed attacks on U.S. troops in the Middle East yesterday. This comes after an anonymous U.S. defense official said U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria faced 2 separate rocket and drone attacks over the weekend. The official said a rocket attack targeted U.S. troops in northeastern Syria on Sunday, less than 24 hours after an attack in western Iraq. These are the first such attacks in close to 3 months. Frequent attacks stopped after the U.S. struck back with airstrikes in Iraq when 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in a drone strike in Jordan. Miller said the attacks show Iran has no respect for Iraqi sovereignty. He said the U.S. has made it clear to Iran and its proxies that it will defend its interests and personnel.
Back in the U.S., the judge in former President Trump's so-called hush money case will hear arguments today over whether Trump violated his gag order.
The prosecution is calling for Trump to be held in contempt.
In a private session without the jury, Justice Merchant will decide whether the prosecution's arguments hold merit.
Prosecutors accused Trump of violating the gag order 10 times, including when he called lawyer-turned-witness Michael Cohen a disgraced attorney and felon on social media. Trump's lawyers have said his social media posts were lawful.
What Judge Merchant would do if he sides with prosecutors is not yet clear. Punishment could range from a fine to jail time.
Jurors in former President Trump's so-called hush money trial heard opening statements yesterday. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the highlights.
Prosecutors alleged on the first day of former President Trump's criminal trial that Trump corrupted the 2016 election and deceived voters by trying to cover up encounters with adult film actress Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal. The prosecution called it, quote, election fraud, pure and simple. Trump's defense attorney told jurors that his client committed no crime and added, quote, there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. Prosecutors say Trump falsified checks and invoices to disguise payments to his personal lawyer Michael Cohen as legal services, when they were actually meant to reimburse him for paying off Daniels. Trump denies an encounter with Daniels and weighed in on the payments to Cohen after court on Monday.
That checks being paid to a lawyer. He is a lawyer, or was a lawyer. And also the things he got in trouble for were things that had nothing to do with me.
The prosecution is expected to call Cohen to the stand to testify against Trump. The former lawyer previously pleaded guilty to tax fraud and lying to Congress. Prosecutors called their first witness, former media mogul David Pecker. Pecker was the CEO of American Media Incorporated, the company prosecutors allege helped Trump bury negative stories leading up to the 2016 election. Pecker is expected to continue testimony on Tuesday. While this is Trump's first criminal trial, a civil fraud case against him is also being heard in New York. Trump's lawyers in the New York AG's office came to terms on a $175 million bond. Trump initially posted the bond through Knight Specialty Insurance as he appeals a $450 million judgment for allegedly inflating his company's net worth. The agreement says Trump has to keep the $175 million in an account controlled exclusively by the insurance company. Any withdrawing or trading from it will be forbidden, and officials will have to provide a monthly statement to the Attorney General. This is so the AG can be sure Trump will comply with a full fine if his appeal fails. Outside the courtroom, a Trump lawyer laid into the 2 ongoing proceedings.
The fact that we have 2 courts, not one, criminal and civil, being used against one man because they cannot beat him in the polls is a disgrace to the American judicial system. He should not have 2 teams of lawyers here today. He should not even be here today because he did nothing wrong. It is the epitome of a witch hunt.
On Monday night, Trump told Real America's Voice that the jury was picked so fast, calling it a very unfair situation because the area is mostly Democrat. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The city of Baltimore is suing the owner and manager of the ship that crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge last month, leading to the bridge's collapse and the deaths of 6 people. The ship, the Dali, is owned by Grace Ocean Private Limited and managed by Synergy Marine. The Baltimore mayor and city council filed a claim on Monday. It accuses both companies of providing the vessel with an incompetent crew that lacked proper skill and training. The claim says the Dali left the port despite having indications of an inconsistent power supply. The city seeks unspecified damages from both companies. Earlier this month, the companies filed a petition in federal court to limit their liability. The city of Baltimore is denying the company's claims in their petition.
The Supreme Court yesterday heard a historic case about the growing issue of homelessness.
It's weighing whether cities can punish people for sleeping outside when there is a lack of shelter space. This comes as record numbers of people are without a permanent place to live in the U.S.
The Supreme Court on Monday confronted the nation's homelessness crisis. Justices heard arguments in a case that started in the small city of Grants Pass, Oregon. The city passed laws that prohibit sleeping in public places. Violators are fined almost $300. Repeat offenders faced up to 30 days in jail. 3 homeless people sued the city over the law back in 2018. An appeals court found that banning camping in places without enough shelter amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. Grants Pass then appealed to the High Court. A key point in this case is a 1962 Supreme Court ruling. It says that the Eighth Amendment bars punishing individuals based on their status. Grants Pass argues it's not punishing people for their status, but for the act of sleeping in public. Liberal justices on Monday disagreed.
Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves not sleeping?
But a lawyer for the city argues that being homeless is not a status.
Status is something that a person is when they're not doing anything. So being addicted, having cancer, being poor are all statuses that you have apart from any conduct.
Another issue is that the city doesn't offer any homeless shelters as alternatives to sleeping in public places. The closest shelter is in a neighboring city 10 minutes away. A lawyer for the plaintiffs used this point in his arguments.
The city is implementing its policy of banishing people, its own residents.
Banishment is a strange word when you're talking about something 10 minutes away.
But again, the question is whether you could still realistically be part of the community where you grew up.
Conservative justices seemed to side with the city during Monday's hearing. The liberal justices mostly leaned towards the plaintiffs. A ruling is due by the end of June.
Up next, a plan to build the first U.S. high-speed train is underway between Las Vegas and L.A. The company project benefits to the economy and the environment. Climb on board for the whole story.
The French Olympic Committee wants to host another Olympic Games in 2030. This time it's aiming for the Winter Olympics. More on the bid coming up.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。 所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
All right, I'm at the house, and I'm gonna head inside. Okay, come on, this door. I'm in the house.
What do you see?
Let me check the den. There's nothing in the den. Let me check the kitchen. There's no one downstairs, it looks like.
Wait, what was that?
I don't know. Let me head upstairs.
What do you see?
What the? Did you shut this bathroom door?
No.
Oh,
What?
It's not here.
What do you mean?
The gun's not here.
What? Where is it?
Oh my God.
What's going on?
Cam.
Oh my God, what's going
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Cam, please, please, open the door, Cameron. Come on, Cam.
Good to have you back. A $12 billion passenger bullet train linking Las Vegas and LA was dubbed the nation's first true high-speed rail project yesterday.
The company building it predicts millions of ticket buyers will board the trains by 2028. Here's more on the plans.
The project will link Vegas with a commuter rail connection to downtown Los Angeles. A station is also planned in California's Victorville area. The project is a combination of government and private sector funding. Parent company Brightline received Biden administration backing, including a $3 billion grant from federal infrastructure funds and recent approval to sell billions more in tax-exempt bonds.
Yeah, in this region particularly, when we are creating, for the first time, we are building the first high-speed rail in this country. The region for it is California, Nevada. It's a perfect place for us to build it. That's why it requires that partnership with the federal delegation, with our state partners, and with our private sector in building this high-speed rail here.
The project should bring thousands of union jobs and boost local economies.
Obviously, local hire, area standard pay, the wage that prevails in the county, those wages are committed to be paid to the folks on the project. Brightline West has entered into what's called the project labor agreement with the building trades, which assures that all workers on the project will be hired at local hiring halls. I'm just excited and ready to put folks back to work. We got a lot of hungry families locally that are ready to get back to work.
Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg outlined numerous benefits of the bullet train project.
There will be a million fewer cars stuck in traffic, so even if you don't use it, you'll be benefiting from the people who do. And because the 15 is such an important freight route, that reduced congestion will have a material benefit to America's supply chains. Everyone who lives near the 15 will breathe less pollution into their lungs, and everyone across the country will live in a climate with 800 million fewer pounds of carbon pollution annually.
The bullet train will reach speeds similar to Japan's famous bullet trains. It should cut down significantly on travel time between the two locations. Officials hope the train line will relieve congestion on I-15, where an average of 44,000 drivers a day often sit in miles of traffic while returning home to California from a Vegas weekend.
This train will move people at 186 miles an hour between Southern California and Las Vegas in just over 2 hours, which is about half the time that it can sometimes take to drive on that road.
Brightline's long-term plan is to link U.S. cities that are too near each other for air travel to make sense and too far for people to drive. The trains will offer restrooms, Wi-Fi, food and beverage sales, and the option to check luggage.
Just think about that for a minute. A 4-hour ride and then cut down to 2 hours.
That's awesome. Listen, I think I'm all for it. I think we are all busy these days, right? So anything that helps us get around more efficiently, faster, I'm all for it.
I mean, I kind of do like a long train ride, though. I've taken a 20-hour Amtrak ride. A lot of clickety-click.
Wow. But you can sleep, you can get some work done, you can
eat.
Yeah, but I have to say I do appreciate the idea of a bullet train that's faster. It brings it to your destination quicker. But let's just fingers crossed that they get it done, things like that. Also in Germany can have a lot of barriers like disputes and, costs, unexpected costs that drags it out for decades. But let's see.
Yeah,
Fingers
looks like
crossed.
they have the green light here. Well, there's no Amtrak that goes to Las Vegas. So
there we
put
go.
some rail
first.
in there.
All right. And we're moving on to the French Olympic Committee, who is presenting its bid to host the 2030 Winter Games.
The committee started a 5-day tour of facilities in different regions of the French Alps yesterday.
We visited 2 weeks ago Salt Lake City in Utah, and now I think we are a step further to coming closer to the final decision. But we have a very, very good feeling here with all the responsible people in France. But we have to do a little bit homework, and this will be the next few days. But we are not crossed the finish line yet.
The IOC Commission began its visit in the northern French Alps, where France wants to hold the cross-country skiing events.
A French official said 95% of the project is based on existing infrastructure. Part of it will come from the Albertville Winter Olympic Games in 1992.
Yeah, and France has also staged the Winter Games in 1924 in Chamonix and in 1968 in Grenoble.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, okay, Winter Games. So what is that, like luging?
Oh,
just zipping down that like ice track?
that would be nice. That sounds fun. But seriously, I was like, did I hear that right? 2030 already? Always multiple steps ahead. We're still having a countdown to the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, but I feel like it will help them out tremendously that they have the infrastructure already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of sporting events coming up, and we got that World Cup coming to Jersey in 2026.
Ooh, looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should keep that all in my calendar. All right, we're wrapping up our show now, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
All right, thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days. In 4th grade, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. I had 70